Welcome to episode 73 of the Valley Sports Talk podcast. It is on the day we're recording this, it is NHL draft night. We're about 45 minutes away, right? Did I do math right? Yeah, math.
I
Yep.
think it starts at 8.
No, 7.
Does it start at 7?
Or maybe the pre-show starts at 7. But anyway, something starts at 7. It's tonight. That's all you need to know. The draft will be over by the time you're watching this. This is kind of going to be a two-parter. Me and Brandon are going to talk about a bit of news before the draft, and then I think we're going to recap the draft after because there's always moves on draft nights. There's already been a couple moves up to this point. So we're going to talk about the moves up to this point, and then you'll see a quick cut. Me and Brandon will probably be wearing different clothes and such, and we will be talking about the draft, but it's all going to be in one video for you guys because we're
Because
like
we're cool like that. Have we ever done that before? I don't think so.
Other than like
Other than interviews.
putting like an interview
Yeah.
in between or something, I don't know if we've actually done like a podcast episode of two clips.
Dedication right there.
Yes.
Dedication. Yeah, so like Noah said, we kind of the draft is about to happen. That's why we're recording this part first. And there's been in the last week or so, there's been a lot of moves being made, and we didn't want them to be lost in our minds from because once the draft starts, everything that happened before kind of gets forgot about. So we want to talk about that, and then like Noah said, we'll transition into the draft. Um, I'm gonna do my best to go in order from oldest to newest. I think I'm doing a pretty good job. The only thing that won't be is my favorite team and Noah's favorite team both made moves today, and we will save those to last. Um, the oldest piece of news is Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno have been traded to Chicago for two prospects, basically.
The oldest that was yesterday.
Yeah, there's been a lot of moves. Okay, maybe not the oldest, but you know what? Just let me be, okay?
Appreciate it, Dickies. But yeah, just a it's weird to say that a former Hart Trophy winner is in a salary dump move. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But yeah, it's a salary dump obviously for Boston. Foligno was was a UFA anyway, so he was coming out the books. But Taylor Hall was getting paid, I think, what, 6 mil or something around there, maybe
Yeah,
more.
he's 6 mil on the dot.
Yeah, 6 on the dot, and yeah, getting him off the books lets Boston have a bit more flexibility this offseason. I honestly think it's a very good move for the Blackhawks. Obviously, after tonight, we're assuming, unless they completely shock the entire NHL universe and they are going to take Connor Bedard tonight, and I think giving him honestly probably a line mate of Taylor Hall is a decent one. Taylor Hall's an above average hockey player if he can stay healthy, that is. And I think it's a good fit for beside Bedard. I think it's a good player to give Bedard in his first year.
Yeah, I totally agree. I like it for Boston. Obviously, like you said, you get the cap dump. Boston has three big free agents this year, and Jeremy Swayman, Dmitry Orlov, and Tyler Bertuzzi. So who do you think from dumping this salary, who do you think their priority is? If you were to prioritize those three players, give me your order.
Oh, I think it goes.
If you're Boston.
I think is a Bertuzzi move. I think Bertuzzi's their number one. Swayman being two, and
I agree.
I think Orlov's number three. I think Orlov was more of a rental than anything. But I think Bertuzzi's honestly just a better Taylor Hall. He's a very slashy player. He creates his own opportunities off the rush. Doesn't have much of a finishing touch, but has speed. And they still, I know, I have heard a lot that Boston is shopping Allmark. So I think Swayman will be back, and I think Swayman honestly will be their starting goalie next year. I've heard a lot on Twitter that Boston's actively shopping Allmark right now for the
It
draft.
makes sense. This is the best return you're ever gonna get for this guy. He's 29, while Swayman's only 24. So I could definitely see that. And then for Chicago, like you said, not only do they get Hall, but they also not re-signed, but they signed Nick Foligno right after to a 1 year,
1 year,
$4
4 million.
million contract. Um, that's probably the Connor Bedard factor right there. I feel like when you have a prospect like Connor Bedard and you get the first overall pick, your rebuild can get fast forwarded really quick because
Players want to play with him.
it
Players want to see what he's about.
Yeah, if you're a free agent and you see Taylor Hall's a right winger, I believe. Is he right or left?
I believe he's a left-handed shot, but plays on his off wing.
That's what I thought too. So if you're like, I know a good left winger is Michael Bunting. If you're a left winger in free agency and you see Connor Bedard and and Taylor Hall, would you not want to sign in Chicago? I mean, that's huge. Yeah, I feel like we're gonna see Chicago might be pretty big in free agency here just because again of that signing.
Now,
Um,
another thing, sorry, before we move on, I also see this 1 year deal as a trade deadline piece. Like I think a team
100%.
would throw a third round pick for Foligno. He's a veteran forward that's played in the playoffs. Like, yeah, just quick thing to throw in, but I could totally see kind of like a Max Domi situation this year.
And he's made it known. That's the perfect point because Nick Foligno's made it known he wants to win a cup. He's never won one, and his last two teams were Toronto and Boston, and he was in Columbus for such a long time, and he said he loved Columbus, and he moved to Toronto just to win a cup, and then signed with Boston again just to try and win a cup. So I could definitely see that. Um, very much in a smaller aspect, the St. Louis Blues traded for Kevin Hayes at 50% retained for a six-round draft pick.
Yeah. Honestly, it was a huge trade. Apparently, there was a huge trade in talks, and I know
Hmm.
happened where Torrey Krug didn't want to move his no move clause to go to Philly, which makes sense because Philly looks like they're completely tearing it down. But Kevin Hayes doesn't really jump out of the page off as you. He's a great player, good player, but he doesn't really. He's not very noticeable. I find on the ice, like he's a very basic hockey player. Not saying that's a bad thing, but he's not like a flashy player like that. He gets the job done. I don't really think this puts St. Louis back over the hump to contend. So but honestly, they gave up not very much for him for a solid third center, maybe a second line winger. But like I said, I don't think this really puts St. Louis over the hump to get back into the contention window.
No, I agree, and I mean Kevin Hayes has been a good player in the past, and St. Louis just reminds me of what doesn't remind me, but is one of those teams that doesn't want to go into a full rebuild. I know they didn't have the best of years last year, but they still have a lot of good young pieces, and I feel like they still want to be a contending hockey team. And if you can get Kevin Hayes at 50% and he can sort of flash back to a couple years ago, then for a six-round pick, definitely worth it. Um, Again, pretty minor trade. The Colorado Avalanche traded Alex Newhook to the Montreal Canadiens for picks 31 and 37. So late first round pick, early second round pick.
Yeah, obviously, um, Colorado didn't have a first round pick. I believe they traded it in another trade, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but I don't know. I am a big fan of Newhook, so I like this trade for the Canadians, get another young player. He's only 23, he's an RFA. I don't think he's gonna break the bank for cost. But I think it's just something that led up to a deal we'll talk about like a bit is the reason they sort of made this. They could probably get a cheaper player to do the same thing that Alex Newhook does, but I don't know. I like this side. I like Montreal's side better.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, obviously for um, Colorado, he's a good young player who just has a lot of really good players ahead of him that he's got to try and climb. So it's going to be hard for him to become an impactful player in this roster. He was kind of bottom 6 minutes. Um, so I get why they were looking to move him and get some draft capital back. But I mean, that's 2 years in a row. Montreal has gotten solid players for late picks. Like they got Kirby Doc last year. Um, I remember Evan was so happy we were at the Ball Diamond when that was announced. But so that's 2 years in a row Montreal's done something like that, and and I mean, along with the young core they have, trading players like for that is it's just going to help them in the future. Um, Breaking away from the trades for one little bit, they did announce um opening day schedule, and we have Tampa Bay Lightning and the Nashville Predators, which I don't think is that big of a game, personally. Then we got the Knights and the Kraken, which is cool because two expansion teams. But the one I want to bring you up against is Pittsburgh opens their season on opening day against Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks. That's kind of cool.
I like it. I think it's honestly a great selling point by the league, honestly getting the best player of the last generation, um, facing off in his first game against possibly, obviously McDavid is going to be there, but possibly if all the hype lives up, the most dominant player of the next generation. Um, so I think it's a very good. My comparable to Bedard is Crosby. It's a smaller Crosby. I think he's got all the same skill set as Crosby, with his decision making and everything. We can talk about that in our draft video, but I like it. Obviously I'll be watching that. I'll be very in tune to watching how Pittsburgh looks, and obviously Bedard getting his first NHL game against an arguable top five player to ever play the game.
Yeah, obviously you and I both know Crosby still has lots to give, but for the average hockey player, not player, for the average hockey fan who just doesn't watch it as deeply as we do, who thinks Sidney Crosby's getting up there in age, do you think the NHL is trying to show it as a passing of the torch, sort of?
I could see it. I think there was a more of a passing of a torch whenever McDavid came into the league because he was. I know. I think Bedard's like the last prospect since McDavid to get as much hype as he has. I wouldn't really say passing the torch, but like you said, I think Crosby still has left lots left in the tank. He was on pace for 108 points last year before he got hurt, or not hurt, before he kind of slowed down. But he still ended the season well over a point per game. So I still think that the torch isn't being passed yet. It's starting to move, but it hasn't fully passed yet.
Crosby's starting to reach his arm out, but he's not handing it over
It's
yet.
he's starting to extend, but he's not handing it off yet.
Moving over, probably the biggest deal so far. We have the Kings acquiring Pierre-Luc Dubois in exchange for Gabe Vilardi, Alex Iafallo, a second round pick, and a prospect. A pretty
Yeah,
good prospect.
I love this trade for Winnipeg. I know
Me too.
Montreal was heavily in it. Winnipeg basically got three impact players. I really like Iafallo and Velarde. And that prospect they got cracked the roster this year. He was a
Yeah,
he made, I forget his name. Um,
it's I'll try, but Rasmus Kupari.
Kupari, yes, Kupari. He looked good, but obviously for Winnipeg, Dubois made it clear. I'm not a very big fan of Dubois at all. He's sort of forced his way off two teams. He's never happy. Yeah. I'm not going to get into that because we're just trying to be quick here. But I find this a win for both teams. Dubois he's stuck there for 8 years now. LA has arguably one of the best top six in the NHL. I definitely put them top five, six. And Winnipeg is going to stay competitive with younger and players that want to be there, and good players that can grow into their sort of shell in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I mean, one of the trade star we didn't talk about, and that the second round pick was Arizona's pick, the one that sent Sean Dursey to Arizona from LA. I think that was a great pickup for Arizona, by the way. But
Yeah, I agree.
um, I mean, yeah, like you said, it's huge for Winnipeg because it sounds like Mark Scheifele will probably never play a game again for them. It sounds like Blake Wheeler will never play a game with them again. Connor Hellebuck probably won't play a game with them again. Like there's lots of moving pieces in Winnipeg, and to bring back, I mean, Alex Alafalo is like 28, so he's a little bit older, but Gabe Vilardi's still young. Rasmus Kupari is really young and good, like you were saying. Um, that's a huge win, especially because Pierre-Luc Dubois was not coming back. And then for the Kings side, I think it's a huge risk and reward. Obviously, Pierre-Luc Dubois is good, but my next point is he signed 8 years, $8.5 million. So that's a lot of money, especially when you're giving up some young players. And I think we can all agree that the LA Kings are good already, but they have a lot of young prospects coming up. And to trade two of those away for a guy who really hasn't proven himself yet, um, and to sign him to an 8 year, $8.5 million. If it doesn't work out, if Pierre-Luc Dubois doesn't work out,
Zach.
the Kings could get some heat for this one. I don't know. I feel like they had such a good young roster, and if Pierre-Luc Dubois doesn't work out, I feel like well, it will be a massive loss. But yeah, no one's moving.
Sorry. People came in my house.
Happens to the best. Happens to the best of us. Moving on from Pierre-Luc Dubois. We call this kind of I guess a couple podcasts ago, we saw that the Devils had three NHL goalies, um, and we thought they would move one. We didn't know which one, but it's Mackenzie Blackwood to the Sharks for a sixth-round pick.
Yeah, I mean he's 2 years ago he's a good goalie, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and even when he has been on the ice, um, he hasn't really been all that good. 6 round pick's probably about what his value was, to be honest. Sharks took a flyer on him. I think that means that Capo Kakinen's gone, and I believe Reimer may be a free agent, so who
Yeah,
knows?
probably. I can search it up real quick while I'm talking. Let's see if I can do both. Yeah,
Well,
like you said, for a six-round pick, it's a can't lose trade for the Sharks. Like,
yeah, the odds of the odds of that 6 round pick being a impact player and or even a good player and is very low. So
yeah, 100%. And
low risk,
yeah,
high reward.
Reimer's a free agent. Uh, Capo is still signed for one more year at 26 years old, and Black was only 26 years old. So I could see them running those two goalies next year. And yeah, it's a six-round pick. If he doesn't work out, six-round pick. If he does work out, well, then that's kind of a steal. Um, going off it, not a trade. We have a signing here. The Stars signed Evgeny Dadonov back to a 2 year, 2.25 average.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think that's
he was
yeah.
pretty good in the playoffs. Obviously, it's good that he's finally found a spot. I feel like he's been tossed around a lot lately. He was on Montreal, he was on Vegas, he was on Ottawa. He's had a carousel of teams the last year, so it's good that he's finally found a spot. I think he's a great middle six winger.
Yeah. Speaking of, I mean, we're just talking about the Jets who are kind of imploding, but speaking of another Canadian team who's imploding, the Calgary Flames traded Tyler Toffoli to the Devils for Sharon Govich and the 80th pick in this year's draft. And then Sharon Govich signed a 2 year, $3.1 million average.
Yeah, I think it's a win for New Jersey. They're getting a goal
New
scorer.
Jersey looks stacked, not to
They
cut you
do.
off.
Their top six looks great. Sucks being a fan of a in the Metro right now. But yeah, I feel like Calgary could have gotten more. Toffoli is a very good goal scorer. He's a very good top six winger. He can play the power play. He's that bumper guy, the 1T guy. So I really like to trade for the Devils as much as it pains me to say that because Pittsburgh's in the Metro. Um, not too high on the return for Calgary.
No, obviously the return for Calgary wasn't as good as you were hoping for, but in the fact that you said they could have got more, I don't know if they could have. Like when you have obviously Tyler Toffoli is a really good player. Plays well in the playoffs. When you got guys like Toffoli, Hanifin, Lindholm, I'm forgetting somebody else, but when they're publicly saying they're not coming back,
Backlund?
Backlund, when they're publicly saying they're not coming back, they're I mean, and they have every right to, but when Tyler Toffoli says he's not coming back, he's screwing the Flames over. Yeah, he's screwing the Flames over. Like they won't be able to get as much as you normally would. As soon as other teams know the player's not coming back, his value instantly goes down. Um, so that's probably as bad as it sounds. That's probably all they could get. That's probably the best offer they received. And
Shocked. Speaking of that, I'm shocked how much. If that's true, then it doesn't really seem true for the Pierre-Luc Dubois situation because I think Winnipeg got a decent haul for them.
the thing is, I think Pierre-Luc Dubois is just younger, and I feel like him and Tyler Toffoli aren't too far off skill wise right now. So, and by the sounds of it, Montreal was pushing pretty hard as well. So in that
I I
case,
I heard Montreal was pushing, but I heard that they didn't. Winnipeg wanted to stay competitive. They didn't want picks. They wanted impact players, which is what they got
yeah.
from
I
LA.
also heard, speaking of Kirby Doc, I heard that Winnipeg wanted Kirby Doc and Montreal wouldn't give it. So I think like what you're saying is accurate. I think LA was okay with giving players where Montreal wanted to give picks.
Yeah.
And that's probably why the deal didn't go through. And then we see Montreal send picks to get Alex Newhook. So I guess every team won and got what they wanted. speaking of trading for picks, the Lightning have traded Ross Colton to the Avalanche for the 37th pick.
Yeah, I think
Big,
he's RFA. I think this is a move to sort of try to sign Killorn. I know they have offered him a high or a long-term deal with lower AV, but he declined it. So right now it looks like he's going to open the market, but I think this trade sort of gives them more flexibility to try to bring back Killorn. And this was like I was talking about earlier. Ross Colton and Alex Newhook I find are very similar players, and I just feel like Ross Colton is a cheaper, well, it's a cheaper version of Alex Newhook, for the Avalanche side. So I like it for both sides.
yeah, I agree. They gotta try and sign back Tanner Jeannot and Alex Killorn, and to do that, you're gonna have to free up some cap space. And Ross Colton was he making mid two?
Yeah, I believe he was an RFA this year though.
Oh, was he? Okay,
I
but
think he's
either
an
way,
RFA.
he was gonna make more than that probably. He was gonna be up by at around three, in between three maybe.
Yeah, I give him 2.75 or something
Yeah,
around.
something like that for sure. So it's basically, do you want Ross Colton or do you want a chance at Alex Killorn and Tanner Jeannot, I guess is how they looked at it. Um, then we got the Devils who re-signed Timo Meyer to an 8-year, $8.8 million average.
Obviously, he's a good player. I think it was a bit of an overpay, in my opinion. I think he's getting around Stutzel money, and I think the Stutzel contract is going to be a way better. It's going to end up looking better than or I think he's even getting Stutzel's getting cheaper. I think the Stutzel contract is going to look way better than this contract. I think New Jersey sort of panicked and decided they had to overpay to get him to stay. I feel like it's the only way that he was going to stay, but I actually do think it's a W for the fact that he's not a rental. You know, they gave up a lot for him at the deadline, and the fact that they were able to bring him back is a big thing. But the only way they were able to do that with his production prior trade, obviously he had a lot of production in San Jose, but his production not prior, sorry, after the trade obviously dipped. So I think it's a bit of an overpay.
Yeah, to pay almost $9 million for the next 8 years to a player who put up what, 1 point in the playoffs?
Yeah, well, I think one goal.
Yeah, that's a little tough. I was shocked all the things I was reading and listening to. The reason this wasn't signed earlier is because the Devils wanted Jack Hughes at $8 million to be their highest paid forward, and that's kind of what they were. That's the message they relayed to Timo Meyer, and somehow he got up past Jack Hughes' number, and I mean, good for them. The Devils, I mean, obviously, if you put Timo Meyer in the playoffs 10 times like that, he's gonna score one goal one time. Like it's not gonna happen again. So he got that out of the way, and now they can move on. And I mean, like you said, their top six looks really good. But I also agree with you. There's probably better players they could have put in that role. But it it does seem like they got a lot of goal scorers, and they could use some. They're kind of like the Leafs of old. They could use some tough guys on that roster. But we shall see. Um, very small piece of news, but I found it funny that it's kind of blowing up. It's Milan Lucic publicly came out and said he will be playing for the Boston Bruins next year.
Oh, that it was
And
700K.
yeah, he said, regardless of if I get traded there or if I have to wait until I'm a free agent, I will be going there. And that kind of makes me feel like this is Milan Lucic's last year in the NHL.
I can see that with him,
Yeah,
also with him winning world championship gold this year for Team Canada and it being his first time wearing the sweater. I feel like he's accomplished everything he's wanted to do uh
yeah.
in the NHL and just sort of a farewell tour in Boston. Well, also I still think Boston's going to be competitive next year with a chance to win the cup.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's won a cup with Boston. His career blossomed in Boston. Yeah, so when you see veterans go back to their first team on a 1 year veteran minimum, it normally means it's their last year, which is kind of unfortunate because Milan Lucic has been such a funny, not funny, he's really good at hockey. He's really good at what he does, but he's been quite the adventure to all around as we've grown up in hockey. Um, Second last thing, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs, the first move as general manager. They've signed David Camp back 4 years, $2.5 million average. We both, when we did the Leafs recap, we both said Camp was going to be gone. So this one kind of shocks me.
I don't think it shocks me. I just think that we were looking at Toronto's having bigger priorities. Um, Basically bigger priorities being Austin Matthews. 2.5 for a fourth line center that provides no scoring is a bit steep, but at the same time, I don't hate it. I do think he was one of their better players in the playoffs. Just I feel like on the defensive side, on the PK side, especially in the Tampa series, he was very noticeable. He personally would be a fourth line player that I would love on my team. So I think 2.5 is maybe a bit steep for a fourth line center, but at the same time, I don't hate it.
See, the way I kind of thought about it is 2.5. I had the same agreement with you. 2.5 is steep for a fourth line center. I think he's going to be the Leafs' third line center. He was the Leafs' third line center all last year until they got Ryan O'Reilly, and then he moved down to fourth. Um, like you said, he's super good defensively. He's really good in the face-off dot, and
Yes, he was 33rd best in the faceoff dot or something like that. Like he was a top 33. I don't know what
yeah.
it was. I saw a stat on it today.
But yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think 2.5 is steep if he's a fourth liner, but because he's making 2.5, I think he will be Toronto's third line center, just like he was to start last season, which says Ryan O'Reilly will not be back as a Toronto Maple Leaf. But
Yeah, I believe so.
such is life. Moving on to the last sort of bit of news here. The Golden Knights re-signed Ivan Barbashev to a 5-year, $5 million contract, and the only reason they were able to do this is because, um, oh my God, I'm blanking. Kyle Dubas, GM or president of the Pittsburgh Penguins, traded for Riley Smith for a third round draft pick.
Yeah, I was a big fan of this trade. I was at the gym whenever I saw it. Basically, and it was also the third that they send was the third that Pittsburgh got in the Teddy Bluger trade. So it was already Vegas's third round pick. So it was basically a Teddy Bluger for Riley Smith swap. Um, which made me love it even more. Riley Smith is a great player. I think he's going to slot in on the second line with Malkin. But the one thing that I think realized as I believe that this means that Zucker's time in Pittsburgh is done.
Probably.
Unless they're possibly able to shed some cap tonight. I know Jeff Petrie has been in talks with San Jose being a possible destination for Petrie. Maybe they can take his contract. But that being said, it's sort of Smith and Zucker to me are similar players, but they're taking less of a long, like I think this sort of sets their window because Smith is 32, signed for 2 years, where if you're gonna sign Zucker, it's probably gonna be 4 or 5 is what he would be demanding. So I think this kind of sets up Pittsburgh's window, the next 2 years obviously being their window with Crosby, Malkin, and Letang all getting up there in age. Um, and like I said, basically just Teddy Bluger, who barely played for Vegas, for Riley Smith. So I have no issues with it.
Yeah, you make good points there. It's a 2-year contract. That's kind of the same contract length as Sidney Crosby. Um, that like you said, that's their window, so it makes a whole lot of sense there. Um, on Vegas's side, the way you got to think about it is they basically traded Riley Smith for a third and Barbashev because if you don't get rid of Riley Smith, it's going to be very difficult to re-sign Barbashev. Actually, I don't think they would have been able to. So, um, they didn't just get a third in that trade; they also got Ivan Barbashev back. So it works out for both sides. Um, and like you said, Pittsburgh definitely has more moves to make. I know being a team that was general managed by Kyle Dubas, he does not like to hold on to his first round picks. So,
Yeah, I
um,
wouldn't be surprised if that gets moved tonight for an impact player.
I think in Kyle Dubas's time, Toronto made 2 first round picks. So, if you were to trade Jeff Petrie in a first round pick, like you said, I wouldn't be very surprised.
Maybe
Other
maybe
guys,
maybe we'll
maybe
get
like
an Eric Carlson coming back at like
yeah,
33 percent
maybe like a
retained.
Michael Granlund. I got no idea. Oh crap! I actually did have two more pieces of news really quick.
Damn.
Um, we can go through these really quick. We both thought that UC Saros was going to get
Yes,
traded,
I saw Skarlov's being talked about.
but it's yeah, Askarov, who's a super highly sought after prospect.
I heard that they're trying to
He's
move
the
into
one.
the top five. Montreal, Montreal, has number five. Would not be shocked if we see a number five going to the Predators for a Skarlov in 15.
I could definitely see that too. The last thing I wanted to bring up, this can be super quick. Obviously the Sharks are looking to trade Erik Karlsson. The Sharks want to move on from Karlsson. Karlsson wants to move on from the Sharks. It's mutual. Um, the NHL put out a news report, and the three teams mostly linked to
Toronto,
Karlsson are the
Florida,
Hurricanes, the Kraken, and the
uh,
Maple Leafs.
Leafs,
Rank
yes.
those three in best fit to worst fit.
Best fit to worst fit. Best fit, Hurricanes, Leafs, Kraken,
Yeah, fair enough. I honestly think the Leafs are probably the worst fit just because I don't know how they would make that work. But the Sharks are definitely going to have to retain 50% of whatever trade happens, probably.
for sure. Or I saw a lot that I saw like 30. I saw a mock trade to the Leafs and it was 33%, and then Muzzin's going back the other way. Muzzin's contract.
Yeah, so yeah, but then Muzzin would be put right onto LTIR. So yeah.
All
But
right.
yeah, that
Anyways,
that's the news.
best of news. Speaking of that, we will jump over to our draft recap.